I never thought I'd live long enough to tell this story. Some nights I wonder if it's worth speaking aloud at all, because once words are freed, you can't take them back. But silence has cost me too much already. Silence is what let my son grow into the kind of man who would betray his own blood. So I'll speak. I'll tell it from the beginning, in my own voice, because no one else lived it the way I did. No one else saw it from this angle, these tired old eyes, this weary heart. My name doesn't matter anymore. Names are for people who still have futures. I don't. All I have is what I've lived and what I've lost. I worked my whole life, 45 years in the same steel plant, from the day I turned 18 until the day my back gave out and they handed me a retirement envelope like a medal. 45 years of sweat and fire and wringing metal, of broken bones and calloused hands, of long nights coming home too tired to eat but too proud to quit. I had one son, just one. His name was Daniel. When he was born, I swore I'd give him the life I never had. I grew up dirt poor, chewing on hunger, and watching my father drink himself to death. I wanted Daniel to have something better, shoes that weren't falling apart, meals that didn't come from charity, an education, a chance, and I gave it to him. God, I gave it all. Every extra shift I worked, every overtime check, every bonus, it went into his schooling, his sports, his hobbies. He wanted guitar lessons. He got them. He wanted the newest sneakers. Done. He wanted a car at 16. I nearly broke myself to make it happen, because I thought love was sacrifice. That's what I believed. That if I bled enough, he'd see it. He'd know what it meant. But kids don't always see blood. Sometimes they only see what you hand them, and they start thinking it falls from the sky. His mother, my wife, was the glue between us. She softened me when I was too hard, reminded him when he was too selfish. She loved him with the kind of love that forgives before the wound even heals. And when cancer took her, everything fell apart. Daniel was 21 then. A man by age, but still a boy in his heart. I watched him stand at her grave, tears on his face, and I thought maybe the loss would teach him the weight of family. Maybe it would bind us closer. Two men left alone in a house too big and too quiet. But grief twists people. It twisted him into something I didn't recognize. At first, it was small. He started skipping classes, chasing parties. He'd come home at 2 in the morning, reeking of beer, eyes glassy. I thought it was just pain, just him stumbling through the storm like anyone would. Then he started asking for money. Little at first, gas money, food money, rent money when he moved out. I gave it without hesitation. Always gave. Because I thought he's hurting, he's lost, he just needs time. But the asks grew bigger. Tuition shortfalls. Investments, car repairs. I started noticing the stories didn't add up. The numbers didn't add up. And when I asked questions, he'd flare up angry, defensive, like I was the one who'd done him wrong. Still, I gave. Because he was my son. Because his mother would have wanted me to. Because I couldn't stand the thought of being the kind of father mine had been. But giving only taught him one thing, that he could take. I remember the day I realized he didn't see me as a father anymore. I was sitting at the kitchen table, looking over the paperwork for my retirement. 45 years, boiled down to numbers on a page. Enough to live on if I was careful. Enough to maybe travel once or twice, see places I'd only read about. Daniel walked in without knocking. He looked at the papers, and his eyes didn't shine with pride. They didn't soften with gratitude. They narrowed, calculating, like a wolf scenting meat. "How much is it?" he asked. Not "How are you feeling, Dad?" Not "What do you plan to do with your time now?" Just "How much?" I tried to laugh it off, but inside something broke. That was the first crack. The first whisper of betrayal. It would take months, years, really, for the crack to spread, for the dam to burst. But that was the moment I knew. The moment I saw in his eyes that he wasn't looking at me as his father anymore. He was looking at me as a vault, and vaults get broken into. I didn't know then just how far he'd go, how deep the knife would sink, but I would learn. And when I did, I learned that the blood in your veins doesn't always bind you. Sometimes it blinds you. Sometimes the cruelest betrayal doesn't come from enemies at your door, but from your own son sitting at your table, smiling as he sharpens the blade. Asterisk, asterisk, it didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about betrayal, it creeps. It doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm, loud and sudden. It seeps like a leak in the roof, slow, silent, until one day you wake up and the whole house is rotten. Daniel knew how to play me. He knew when to soften his voice, when to pretend to be vulnerable, when to let the word Dad hang heavy, like it still meant something sacred. The first big ask came a year after his mother died. He'd found an opportunity, he said. Some business venture with friends, an app, a startup, something vague enough to sound impressive, something flashy enough to make me feel out of touch. I asked him what exactly they were building. He talked circles around me, throwing out words like seed money and capitalization. None of it meant anything, and he knew it. He was counting on my ignorance. "How much do you need?" I asked finally. He smiled, that wide, confident smile. "Just 20,000. A small loan. An investment, really. You'll make it back tenfold. Double quotes 20,000. My chest tightened when I heard the number. That wasn't gas money. That wasn't rent. That was a chunk of my retirement, the retirement I'd sweated for, bled for. I told him no. For the first time I said it plain. "No, Daniel. I can't." The way his smile vanished, the way his eyes hardened, it was like watching frost spread across glass. "Can't or won't?" He snapped. "Both," I said. "I worked for that money. It's for me. For the rest of my life." He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He just looked at me with something I'd never seen before in my own son's eyes. Contempt. Like I was a fool. Like I was selfish. And that was the seed. After that, his visits grew fewer, but his requests grew sharper. He started circling the topic every time he came by, asking how much I had saved, dropping comments about how unfair it was that I was just sitting on money while he was trying to build something. I could feel him pulling away, brick by brick, wall by wall. I remember one night clear as day. He'd come over late, drunk, his words slurring. He stood in the kitchen, staring at me across the counter, and said, "You owe me, you know that? You owe me everything. You think I didn't see Mom cover for you? You think I didn't notice how hard she worked to keep this family from falling apart? If it weren't for her, you'd have nothing. And now you're hoarding money she would have wanted me to have." It hit me like a slap. Not just the words, but the venom behind them. I didn't argue. I just walked past him, went to bed, let his drunken muttering fade into silence. But the words stayed. Owe him? Me? I owed him food, shelter, education. I'd given him all of that and more, and still he looked at me not as a father, but as a bank that hadn't paid out yet. He moved out for good after that, into some apartment downtown. I thought maybe the distance would cool things. Maybe he'd grow, mature, find his own path. But then came the phone calls, at first casual, then urgent, then desperate. Dad, I'm short this month. Dad, I just need a bridge loan. Dad, they're threatening me. Dad, if you love me, you'll help. If you love me. The cruelest hook, and God help me. I did help. Again and again. Not as much as he wanted, but enough to keep him afloat. I told myself it was temporary, that he just needed time, but every time I gave, he took more. And every time I refused, the contempt grew deeper in his voice. The last straw came the day I got a call from the bank. They said someone had tried to access my retirement account online multiple times. Wrong passwords. Failed attempts. They asked if it was me. It wasn't. I checked my desk drawer later that night, where I kept the account information. The papers had been moved. Not stolen, just shifted, rifled through, like someone had been hunting quietly and put everything back hoping I wouldn't notice. But I noticed, and when I confronted Daniel, he didn't even deny it. He just sneered. Why are you surprised? You weren't going to give it to me, so I figured I'd take what should have been mine anyway. That was the moment. The moment the leak in the roof became a collapse. The moment I stopped seeing him as my son. I looked at him across the table, and I saw not a boy I'd raised, not the child I'd carried on my shoulders, not the teenager I'd cheered for at ball games. I saw a predator, a stranger wearing my son's face, and in that moment something cold settled inside me. If he wanted war, I would give him war. I'd survived steel mills, bone breaks, poverty, hunger. I'd buried a wife. I knew pain, and I knew how to endure it. He thought I was weak because my hair was gray and my hands shook some mornings. But he'd forgotten something. I was still his father, and fathers know how to teach lessons. Asterisk, asterisk. When you spend your life working with fire and steel, you learn to recognize pressure. You know the groan of a beam that's about to snap, the hiss of metal just before it warps. My relationship with Daniel had reached that point. The pressure was too high, the cracks too deep. Something was going to break, and it did. It was late autumn, the air sharp with cold. I'd been careful since the account theft, locking things tighter, checking over my shoulder. But I didn't expect him to hit me where he did. I was at the grocery store when it happened, just buying the week's food, nothing special. As I rolled my cart out, I felt eyes on me. 3 young men leaned against a car near the exit, watching. 2 clean-cut to be drifters, 2 tense to be friendly. One of them stepped forward. "You're Daniel's old man, right?" I froze. "Yeah, we've been doing some business with him. Problem is, he says he can't pay until you release more funds. Now, we're patient guys, but patience runs out." They weren't asking. They were warning. I kept my face steady. "I don't know what Daniel told you, but I don't owe you a damn thing." The man smirked. "See, that's the thing. When family borrows, it's all the same. Blood pays blood. They didn't touch me. Didn't have to." The message was delivered. I drove home slow, hands gripping the wheel, the words echoing in my head. Blood pays blood. That night I called Daniel. My voice was shaking, though I tried to keep it even. "What the hell have you gotten yourself into?" He laughed. "Oh, don't worry about them. Just some friends helping me with cash flow. They're harmless. They threatened me." His tone sharpened. "Then give me the money, Dad. This doesn't have to be complicated. You've got enough. You'll never spend it all. Just hand it over, and they'll leave you alone. The audacity of it. The shamelessness. You set them on me," I said slowly. Silence. Then, "Cold as winter. If you'd just helped me from the start, I wouldn't have had to." I hung up before I said something that would have burned every bridge left. But inside, the bridges were already ash. The days that followed were hell. The men didn't come back, but their shadow lingered. Every time a car slowed near my house, I thought it was them. Every knock on the door set my teeth on edge. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating much. Just sat up at night, staring at the dark, hearing my wife's voice in my head. "Protect him. Love him. He's your son." But another voice grew louder. "My own. He's not your son anymore. He sold that title the moment he put you in harm's way." The breaking point came one Sunday dot. I went to church like I always did, though I hadn't felt faith in a long time. I sat through the hymns, the sermon, the prayers. And when it was over, I walked into the parking lot, and there he was, Daniel Dot. He leaned against a shiny car I knew he couldn't afford, wearing clothes that looked like they cost more than a month of my pension. He smiled like a wolf when he saw me. "Dad," he said, spreading his arms like we were old friends. "Glad you're here. We need to talk. I didn't want to." Every bone in my body told me to walk away, but I stood there, frozen, while he stepped closer. "You've made this harder than it needs to be. I've got people depending on me, deals in motion. I can't look weak. You're holding me back. So here's the deal. You sign over control of your retirement account to me today, or things get ugly." I stared at him, trying to find some trace of the boy I'd raised, some glimmer of the child who used to fall asleep on my chest, who used to hold his mother's hand at the county fair. But all I saw was greed. All I saw was a stranger. And then he said the words that broke me completely. "You're old. Dad, you don't need that money." "I do. You're just wasting it on groceries and rocking chairs. Mom would have wanted me to have it. She told me once, she said I'd carry the family name. So don't make this harder. Sign it over." My chest burned. Not from anger, but from something worse, shame. Because for a heartbeat, I believed him. For a heartbeat, I wondered if I really was wasting it, if my wife really would have sided with him. But then I saw the smugness in his eyes, the confidence, the way he leaned back like he'd already won. And I knew she would never have wanted this. She would never have wanted me to bend. I stepped close, so close he had to lean back. My voice was low, steady. "If you ever drag your mother's name into this again, you'll regret it." For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. That night, I sat in my chair, the dog at my feet, the papers spread out before me, and I made my choice. If Daniel wanted war, he'd get it. I wasn't going to fight him with fists. I wasn't going to fight him with lawyers. I was going to fight him with patience, with cunning, with every ounce of strength I had left. He thought I was weak. He thought he could bleed me dry. He forgot I was the man who built his world from nothing. and I was about to take it all back. Asterisk, asterisk, I never slept that night. I sat in my chair, staring at the walls that had held my life for decades. The house smelled faintly of my wife's old perfume, though she'd been gone for years. Maybe it was just memory playing tricks. Maybe it was her ghost reminding me, don't let him win Dot, so I didn't. The first step in war isn't striking. It's watching. It's learning your enemy. And my enemy was my own son. I started small. I followed him, not close enough to spook him, but close enough to learn. Where he spent his nights, who he met, what he drove, what he wore, how he lived, and what I learned sickened me. The car he leaned on at church, leased with payments he couldn't cover. The apartment he bragged about, rent overdue 3 months. The business partners he called friends, thugs in leather jackets, men with too many tattoos and too much time. He was living in a house of cards, each one borrowed, each one stolen, stacked higher and higher. And when the wind came, it would all come down. But I didn't want to wait for the wind. I wanted to be the storm Dot I spent days digging. Old contacts, old tricks from the factory floor men who knew men, folks who'd seen Daniel at poker tables, at bars, at the back rooms where bets are made in whispers. And the picture came together. My son was in debt, neck deep, and sinking fast. He wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. That was leverage. The second step was preparing myself. I was 65, not 35. My knees ached, my back popped, my hands stiffened in the morning cold. But muscle remembers. Endurance remembers. I started running again slow at first, around the block, lungs burning like fire. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretching until my bones screamed. I hit the heavy bag in the garage, dust flying off its cracked leather. Each punch was his face. Each grunt was a promise. Neighbors must have thought I'd lost my mind, this old man pounding away like a soldier. But madness was the point. Madness was fuel. The third step was laying the trap. I knew Daniel's weakness wasn't just money, it was pride. He wanted to win, to prove he was smarter, tougher, sharper than me. So I gave him the bait Dot I called him. My voice cracked just enough to sound real. Daniel, you were right. I can't keep living like this. The money's just sitting there. Let's meet. I'll give you what you want. He paused, suspicious. What changed? I forced a sigh. Your mother. I thought about what she'd say. She'd want peace between us. She'd want me to support you. I could almost hear his grin through the phone. He thought he'd broken me Dot. We set a meeting for Friday night. Neutral ground, he said. A storage unit he'd rented on the edge of town. Claimed it was safer than the bank, safer than the house. I agreed, Dot, then I prepared. I packed a crowbar, heavy and cold, the same one I'd used for decades to pry open stubborn crates at the factory. I packed duct tape, rope, gloves, not because I wanted to kill him right there, not yet, but because I didn't know what would happen, and I wasn't going in unarmed. And lastly, I packed something of my wife's, a small silver locket with her picture inside. I kissed it, tucked it in my shirt pocket. Guide me, I whispered. Dot. Friday came slow, each hour dragging like rusted chains. By the time the sun dipped, my hands shook, but not from fear. From anticipation, I drove out to the unit, headlights cutting through the mist. The place was desolate. Rows of metal doors under flickering lights, The kind of place where bad things happen and no one hears. Daniel was waiting, leaning against the roll-up door of the unit he'd chosen. He looked sharp too sharp. Black jacket, gold chain, smile like a blade. "Dad," he said warmly, like nothing was broken. "I knew you'd come around." I forced a weak smile. "You were right. Let's just end this." He gestured inside. "Got the papers?" I nodded, patting the folder under my arm. Inside it wasn't bank documents, but blank sheets and old bills. He'd never see the difference until it was too late. I stepped inside. The unit smelled of oil and dust, echoing hollow under the bare bulb overhead. He followed, rolling the door down with a metallic clang, and in that moment something shifted. The years of hurt, of betrayal, of shame, they condensed into steel in my chest. I straightened my back, squared my shoulders, and looked him dead in the eye. "No, Daniel," I said quietly. "You were wrong. About everything." His smile faltered. "What are you?" I swung the crowbar, not to kill. Not yet. Just enough to make him stumble, to see fear crack his mask for the first time. He cursed, grabbing his arm, eyes wide. "What the hell, old man?" I stepped closer, crowbar steady in my grip. "I gave you everything. My blood, my sweat, my life. And you spit on it. You used me. You sold your own father out to criminals. You don't want money, Daniel. You want power. And I'm here to take it back." For a moment he just stared, shocked. Then he laughed high, shaky, but real. "You think you scare me? You're old, Dad, weak. You can't touch me." I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Try me." Asterisk, asterisk. The clang of the crowbar against Daniel's arm echoed through the storage unit like a gunshot. His laugh cut short, replaced by a hiss of pain. He clutched his wrist, teeth bared, eyes flashing with something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. But it didn't last. "You're making a big mistake, old man," he snarled, shaking his arm out, his posture shifting, squaring up. "You really think you can stop me with that?" He lunged. Faster than I expected, his shoulder slamming into me. My back hit the metal wall of the unit, rattling it like thunder. The crowbar nearly slipped from my grip, but instinct kept my hand tight around it. He tried to rip it free, but I twisted, driving my knee up into his gut. He coughed, stumbling back, and I swung again, this time grazing his ribs. "Stop!" he shouted, anger and desperation bleeding together. "I don't want to hurt you." I growled, voice low and raw. "You already have." We circled, the bulb overhead flickering, shadows jerking across the walls like ghosts watching. He was younger, faster, but I had something he didn't. Purpose. He charged again. This time I didn't swing. I sidestepped, using his momentum to shove him into a stack of crates. He crashed hard, the wood splintering, dust flying into the air. He groaned, then laughed again, a mad edge creeping in. "Damn, Dad. Didn't think you had it in you." I gripped the crowbar tighter, chest heaving. "You never knew me. You never cared to." He pushed himself up, blood on his lip. "I cared about winning. And I'm still going to. You're not strong enough to stop me." He rushed me a third time, but this time his fist connected square across my jaw. Stars exploded in my vision. I staggered, the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth. For a split second I faltered. My age caught up with me, my bones screaming, my muscles begging to quit. And Daniel saw it. "There it is," he said, smirking through his blood. "You're finished." He came at me again, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. I swung low, smashing the crowbar against his shin. The crack echoed, and he screamed, collapsing to one knee. I followed through, slamming the bar across his back. He hit the ground, gasping, groaning, but still fighting, clawing at my leg, trying to drag me down. His strength was wild, animalistic, but sloppy. I wrenched free, standing over him, chest heaving, crowbar raised. "Do it," he spat, glaring up at me, blood dripping down his chin. "Kill me. That's what you want, isn't it? You've been waiting for this. And God help me. In that moment I wanted to. I saw every sleepless night, every dollar stolen, every insult, every betrayal. I saw his mother's face, pale and gone, and how he'd used her name as a weapon. My arms trembled with rage, with grief, with the weight of everything, but I didn't swing. Not yet. Instead, I lowered the bar just enough to press it against his throat. He gagged, eyes bulging, clawing at it. "You think you're strong," I growled, voice shaking. "You think you can take what you want, use people, destroy everything your mother and I built? No, not anymore. This ends tonight." He choked, gasping, face turning red. For the first time, real terror flickered in his eyes. I let the pressure off just enough for him to breathe. Then I leaned close, my voice a whisper in his ear. "I could kill you right now. No one would know. No one would care. And God knows you've earned it." He shivered beneath me, his bravado crumbling. "But death would be too easy," I continued. "No, Daniel. You're going to live. You're going to live with nothing. No money, no friends, no power. I'll take it all back. And when you're lying in the gutter begging for scraps, you'll remember this night. You'll remember your father broke you." I stood, ripping the crowbar away. He gasped, rolling onto his side, coughing violently, clutching his throat. I could have left then. That could have been the end. But something in me, something dark, needed more. I pulled the rope from my bag, binding his wrists tight, ignoring his curses. Duct tape over his mouth silenced him. He thrashed, furious, eyes blazing with hatred. I hauled him up, dragging him into the corner of the unit. The old man in me ached, every joint screaming, but rage gave me strength. I tied him to a steel support beam, the ropes cutting deep into his skin. Then I stood back, crowbar hanging at my side, and looked at what I'd done. My son. My only son. Beaten, bound, helpless. Tears blurred my vision, burning hot. I hated him. God, I hated him. But underneath the hate was sorrow so deep it felt like drowning. He muffled a sound anger, not apology. He wasn't sorry. He'd never be sorry. And that's when I knew mercy had no place here. I knelt, grabbing his chin, forcing him to look at me. "You'll never see me as your father again. Fine. From now on, you'll see me as the man who destroyed you. And every time you try to climb back up, I'll be there, waiting to knock you down again." His muffled roar shook the unit. I stood, pocketed the locket from my wife, and walked to the door. The last thing he saw as I rolled it open was my back, straight and unbroken, silhouetted against the night. The storm had finally broken. And I was its center. Asterisk, asterisk, when I walked out of that storage unit, the night air hit me like baptism. Cold, cleansing, a new man stepping from an old skin. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, God, no, but clarity. Daniel was no longer my son. He was my enemy. And enemies you don't pity. Enemies you dismantle. I didn't call the cops. What good would that do? He'd talk his way out, turn himself into the victim, paint me as the crazy old man who lost control. No, the law couldn't touch him. But I could. The plan came together, piece by piece, sharp as glass. First, his finances. I knew more about his accounts than he thought. I'd raced him, after all. I knew his passwords, his habits, his arrogance. He never imagined I'd fight back. So I drained what little he had left. Not by stealing. It wasn't about money. It was about exposure. I called creditors, reported fraud, traced his debts back to him. Every unpaid loan, every shady investment, it all landed squarely on his shoulders. Within a month, his car was repossessed, his apartment padlocked, his business deals collapsing under the weight of debt collectors. Second, his reputation. Daniel thrived on image. He wanted people to see him as powerful, untouchable. So I made sure they saw the truth. I sent anonymous letters to his partners, his employers, his so-called friends. Proof of the scams, the lies, the betrayals. Screenshots, receipts, photos. I left nothing out. One by one, they abandoned him. The calls stopped. The invitations dried up. His phone went silent. His pride. This part won't admit was cruel. But cruelty was the only language he understood. I followed him, not to hurt him, but to watch him fall, to see the cracks widen, the once sharp suit replaced by thrift store rags, the swagger in his step shrinking to a shuffle, the man who used to sneer at me now begging strangers for a drink, and every time he thought he'd found footing, I kicked it away. A job lined up, I'd make a call, drop a word, reveal his past. A new friend offering help, I'd whisper truths until the friend walked. I didn't just break him, I erased him. But revenge is a strange beast. At first it fed me, gave me purpose. Each loss of his was a victory of mine. But as weeks turned into months, I began to feel the weight. I'd sit in my chair at night, the house dark, the dog asleep at my feet, and wonder, was I avenging my wife? Or was I just becoming what Daniel had always been? The answer didn't come easy. One night, months after the storage unit, I found him. I was walking home from the corner store, the bag of groceries light in my hand. The air was cold, breath fogging in front of me. And then I saw him sitting on the curb near the bus stop, head in his hands. Daniel. He was thinner, gaunt. His hair greasy, beard patchy. His jacket torn, shoes worn through. He looked less like my son and more like a ghost of him. He saw me before I could turn away. "Dad," he rasped, his voice hollow. "Please." For a moment the years fell away. For a moment I saw the boy he'd been, the child who used to tug my sleeve asking for one more bedtime story. My chest ached with it. But then I remembered the threats, the thieves, the way he'd spat his mother's name like a weapon. And the ache hardened to stone. I stepped closer, but not too close. "What do you want, Daniel?" He looked up, eyes bloodshot, lips trembling. I just need help. A place to stay. Some cash. Please, I'll change, I swear. I'll be better. I studied him. Every word was rehearsed, every tear a performance. He'd always been a good actor. No, I said simply. His face twisted. You can't just, you're my father. I shook my head. No, not anymore. You killed that bond when you sold me out. I'm not your father. You're not my son. We're just two men, and one of us is stronger. His mouth opened, closed, fury battling despair. You'll regret this, he spat finally. You'll die alone. I leaned close, voice like gravel. Better alone than poisoned by your kind of blood. And then I walked away. He screamed after me, curses echoing down the street, but I didn't look back. That was the last time I saw him. The days after felt empty. My house was quiet, too quiet. The dog's nails clicking on the floor were the only sounds. I'd sit at the table, coffee cooling, staring at the empty chair where my wife used to sit. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd stripped him of everything, but there was no joy in it. Only silence. Sometimes in the dark hours before dawn, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If I'd become the monster I swore to fight. But then I'd remember the look in his eyes at the storage unit, the smug certainty, the way he'd used me, broken me, laughed at me, and I knew I hadn't gone far enough because he was still out there, breathing, waiting, and one day he might crawl back from the gutter, and if he does, I'll be ready. Asterisk, asterisk, I sometimes wonder what my wife would say if she could see me now. Would she flinch at the hardness in my voice? Would she recognize the man I've become, or would she call me a stranger? Maybe she'd lay her hand on mine the way she used to, that gentle weight that could silence any storm, but she's gone. And silence is all I have left. Daniel hasn't come back. Not yet. Months have stretched into seasons, seasons into years. For all I know, he's dead in some ditch or rotting in a prison cell under a name that isn't his. Maybe he's still out there somewhere, clawing through the dirt for scraps. I don't check. I don't chase. Because in truth, it doesn't matter. The son I raised, the boy who once laughed in the back seat while we drove to county fairs, who fell asleep with his head on his mother's shoulder, that boy died a long time ago. What's left is just a shadow, and I destroyed that shadow, piece by piece. When I sit in this house now, I sometimes feel like a king in a ruined castle. The walls stand, the roof holds, but every corner echoes with ghosts. Her ghost, his ghost, my own. I tell myself I did what had to be done, that I wasn't just avenging myself, but protecting her memory. He tarnished her name, spat on it, tried to twist it into a weapon. I couldn't let that stand, but the truth is darker. The truth is I wanted to hurt him, not just once, not just in anger, but again and again, slow, deliberate, patient. I wanted him to feel every ounce of what he'd made me feel, powerless, ashamed, broken, and I made sure he did. Does that make me just like him? Maybe, but I've learned something in all this. Blood is no shield. Family is no guarantee. The people you love most can carve you deepest, and when they do, the only choice is whether you bleed quietly or you cut back harder. I chose to cut back. The nights are long now. I sleep less, dream more. Sometimes I dream of him as a boy again, tugging my sleeve, asking for one more story before bed. Sometimes I dream of him older, sitting across from me at the table, smiling that smug smile, eyes gleaming with greed, and sometimes in the darkest hours, I dream of him standing in the doorway, older, harder, ready for another war. Because deep down, I know this isn't over. Men like Daniel don't disappear. They crawl back. They rise. They wait for weakness. And if he does, if the day comes when he returns, demanding what he thinks is his, then I'll meet him again. Not as a father, not as blood, but as a man who's already buried his son once, and won't hesitate to do it again. So here I sit, an old man in a quiet house. The dog's asleep at my feet, the clock ticks steady on the wall, and the shadows stretch long across the floor. People talk about legacy, about what we leave behind. Some leave money, some leave stories, some leave nothing but a name carved into stone. Me? I leave a warning to any son who thinks his father is just a wallet, to any child who mistakes kindness for weakness, to anyone who forgets the blood and sweat that built the roof over their head. The warning is simple. Even the gentlest man can turn savage when betrayal cuts deep enough. And when a father takes revenge. Hell itself couldn't stop him. The night presses in around me now. I lean back in my chair, close my eyes, and let the silence settle. For the first time in years, I don't feel fear. Not of him, not of the past, not of what's to come, because fear is for men who still have something left to lose. And me? I already lost it all. All that's left is the story. My story. The story of a father, a son, and the fire that burned between us until nothing remained but ash. And if you take anything from this, if these words mean anything at all, let it be this. Never mistake a father's love for endless forgiveness. Sometimes love dies, and what rises in its place is vengeance.